What is the greatest threat to national security is not just a foreign terrorist organization overseas, but a network digitally connected extremists inspired in the real time from a smartphone in your neighborhood. Today, we're breaking down the national strategy for counterterrorism and the DHS strategic framework in a way that makes sense, connects terror to reality, and shows why Homeland Security is not just a government function, but a shared societal responsibility. We'll unpack how terrorism is framed, how policy adapts, and why agility, resilience, and collaboration are the defining themes of modern security strategy. If you care about governance, critical infrastructure, crisis leadership, or simply understanding how your country protects itself, this video is for you. Let's get started. Counterterrorism strategy matters today because the threat environment is no longer simple, centralized, or geographically confined. We are dealing with foreign terrorist organizations, domestic violent extremists, lone actors, and digitally connected networks operating simultaneously. Technology has accelerated radicalization, recruitment, and operational planning, shrinking the timeline between grievance and violence. Critical infrastructure such as energy grids, hospitals, transportation hubs, and financial systems are increasingly interconnected and therefore vulnerable to cascading disruption. What makes this moment unique is that counterterrorism is no longer just about military response, but about governance, prevention, resilience, and social stability. This is why the National Strategy for Counterterrorism and the DHS Strategic Framework represent an evolution in how the United States conceptualizes and addresses terrorism. One of the most powerful ways to understand terrorism is through perceptual framing. Terrorism can be viewed as crime, which emphasizes investigation and prosecution. It can be viewed as war, which emphasizes national defense and military doctrine. It can be understood as a decentralized network, which shifts attention to organizational design and adaptability. Or it can be framed as a complex system involving social, political, economic, and technological dynamics interacting simultaneously. The national strategy reflects this multi-lens understanding by integrating law enforcement, intelligence, military, community partnerships, and infrastructure protection. When we change the lens, we change the policy tools we prioritize. After 9/11, the United States adopted a war centered model emphasizing preemption and overseas disruption. That approach targeted hierarchical organizations like Al Qaeda and later ISIS. However, the threat landscape evolved. Domestic violent extremism, racially motivated actors, and lone offenders began contributing to a growing share of attacks. Online ecosystems enabled ideological spread without centralized command structures. Today's strategy reflects this evolution by balancing foreign threat containment with domestic prevention and resilience building. The shift signals a recognition that tourism adapts and therefore strategy must adapt faster. Agility is central to the modern counterterrorism strategy. Terrorist networks evolve rapidly, exploit new technologies, and adapt tactics to bypass conventional defenses. An agility strategy integrates intelligence across agencies and uses data analytics to detect patterns before violence materializes. Emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence and unnamed systems present both risk and opportunity, requiring constant reassessment. Agility also means policy flexibility rather than rigid doctrine. If adversaries move fast, government structures must move faster. The strategy recognizes that resilience without agility is reactive rather than preventive. Resilience shifts focus from preventing every attack to strengthening systems so they withstand disruption. Critical infrastructure must be hardened, diversified, and analyzed for interdependencies. Community preparedness ensures local actors know how to respond when crises occur. Redundancy systems prevent cascading failures across interconnected networks. Resilience also includes protecting civil rights and maintaining public trust because fear and overreacting can destabilize democratic institutions. A resilient society recovers quickly, learns continuously, and refuses to allow violence to fracture governance. That is a strategic advantage over extremist movements seeking psychological impact. The strategy places heavy emphasis on prevention architecture, which is a structured system designed to intervene before violence occurs. Early intervention relies on community awareness, educators, faith leaders, and local networks recognizing warning signs. Mental health engagement plays a role when grievances escalate toward violent intent. Counter messaging addresses online propaganda ecosystems. Youth engagement reduces vulnerability to recruitment narratives. Prevention recognizes that force alone cannot solve radicalization pathways. The earlier the intervention, the lower the cost in lives and resources. Organizational design determines whether strategy succeeds. Terrorist groups often operate as decentralized cells, so government must match that flexibility with network coordination. Federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial partners must share intelligence seamlessly. Situational awareness is essential during rapidly evolving crises. Surge capacity ensures additional resources can deploy quickly when local systems are overwhelmed. Without integrated execution, fragmentation weakness, response effectiveness. Governance structure is not an abstract issue, it is operational survival. Modern strategy incorporates advanced analytics to understand infrastructure vulnerabilities. Critical systems are layered networks, meaning disruption in one sector can trigger cascading effects in others. Data-driven allocation improves prioritization of protective resources. Biometric screening and intelligence fusion enhance detection of high-risk actors. Cybersecurity integration recognizes that physical and digital domains are inseparable. Predictive modeling helps decision makers anticipate rather than merely react. Security is increasingly about foresight powered by data. Domestic terrorism has emerged as a significant component of the threat landscape. Racially motivated violent extremism and space actors have contributed to increased fatalities. Lone actors may operate independently yet draw ideological inspiration online. The strategy acknowledges this shift and expands prevention efforts domestically. Community resilience becomes central because warning signs often appear locally. Policy adaptation reflects recognition that threats do not always originate overseas. National security begins at the community level. Counterterrorism must operate within constitutional boundaries. Privacy protection and transparency preserve legitimacy. Accountability mechanisms ensure authority is not abused. Public trust determines whether communities cooperate with prevention initiatives. Democratic resilience depends on safeguarding civil liberties even during heightened threat periods. Ethical leadership reinforces credibility domestically and internationally. Security without legitimacy ultimately weakens national strength. The 1992 Los Angeles riots provide insight into how governance structures are stress tested during mass unrest. Local capacity was overwhelmed, revealing coordination gaps across agencies. Fragmented communication delayed unified response. The crisis demonstrated the importance of surge capacity and integrated execution. Though not international terrorism, the event illustrated how violence challenges institutional design. Subsequent reforms emphasized collaboration and preparedness. The example reinforces why multi-lens analysis is essential. Effectiveness must be measured through multiple indicators. Fidelity trends provide partial insight but do not capture prevented incidents. Radicalization indicators and intervention success rates matter equally. Infrastructure resilience metrics assess recovery speed after disruption. Interagency coordination performance determines operational fluidity. Continuous evaluation ensures policy refinement. Strategy is not static, it evolves through feedback loops. Significant challenges remain. Political polarization complicates unified messaging. Resource constraints limit scalability. Emerging technologies can be misused by malicious actors. Foreign interference and disinformation campaigns undermine social cohesion. Jurisdictional complexity complicates unified implementation. Sustained funding and bipartisan commitment are essential. Without stability in governance, even well designed strategy struggles. When synthesized, the strategy integrates crime control, war doctrine, network theory, and collaborative governance. It balances enforcement with prevention. It emphasizes resilience alongside agility. It leverages data without sacrificing rights. It builds partnerships beyond government agencies. The whole of society model reflects recognition that Homeland Security is collective. Integration is the defining strength of modern counterterrorism strategy. The National Strategy for Counterterrorism and DHS Strategic Framework represent adaptive governance in action. They reflect lessons learned from 2 decades of evolving threats. They emphasize shared responsibility between government, private sector, and communities. They promote resilience as a cultural value rather than a reactive posture. Policy innovation and disciplined leadership will determine long-term success. Future readiness depends on our ability to integrate insight, technology, and trust. Terrorism is not static, and neither can strategy be. The future of Homeland Security depends on our capacity to remain agile, resilient, and collaborative in the face of complexity. When we understand terrorism through multiple lenses, we gain clarity instead of confusion. When we build prevention architecture and protect civil liberties simultaneously, we strengthen democracy rather than compromise it. And when governance operates as a coordinated network instead of isolated silos, we transform vulnerability into strategic advantage. If you found value in this deep dive, subscribe, share, and continue to conversation. National security is not just policy, it is participation.